All right, so let's start. It's about 2 minutes after 12. Hopefully more people will join us. So today we're going to talk about email encryption and making sure that, if you are trying to send any sensitive data out, um, nobody can nobody can take a look at it. Another thing that we're going to talk about, actually, let me move the slides to agenda. And so the agenda is, we're going to talk about what is the difference between SSL and Start TLS. What does Start TLS provide? What is the reason why we need end-to-end encryption, and so on and so forth. Okay. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is a little bit of history about email and what is SSL. So when email was first started, obviously it was on port 25. Everybody was sending each other emails on port 25, and there was no encryption. Later on, it was decided that, hey, maybe there should be some sort of encryption. And in order to accomplish that, another encrypted port was introduced, which is 465. But the problem was that nobody, how do you tell the sender to use port 465 or port 25? And that was a big challenge. So nobody actually started using 465. People were still sending emails on port 25. Later on, another technology was introduced, which is called Start TLS. And Start TLS still uses port 25, but in an encrypted manner. So the way it works is, initially, the first hello is in plain without encryption. And then the client, the program that is sending the email, that's the SMTP client, it is going to query the server to check if the server supports encryption. If the server supports encryption, it is going to start the encrypted communication, and from there onwards, everything's going to be encrypted. So when you send a user ID and password, that's going to be encrypted. The email, the mail from, and as well as the data, entire thing gets encrypted. So Start TLS is a much better option than SSL / TLS, simply because it uses the same port. From a functionality perspective, there's no difference, but since we're saving a TCP/IP port, Start TLS is a much better option. So now anybody who wants to do encrypted email, they don't have to, fish for a different port. They can continue doing it on port 25. And that's the advantage of Start TLS. So now let's see what Start TLS gives us. Start TLS basically encrypts the communication channel. So in this case, the red lines are indicated by encrypted message, and the gray one is not encrypted. And the reason why gray is not encrypted is because the xyz.com's server, it doesn't support Start TLS. And since it does not support Start TLS, when you send an email out from Zeems or any email server, the data is not going to be encrypted. So the benefit of encrypting is that anybody in the middle cannot see what two parties are sending each other. So that's the benefit of Start TLS. It just encrypts the channel. Now, of course, we need a certificate for TLS to occur, and that certificate is usually required only by the receiving end, which is the server. SMTP communication is pretty much similar to web SSL. When you connect on the internet, it's the server that has to obtain a certificate. There is no certificate required on your browser end. So the way it works is the browser talks to the server. It confirms that it trusts the certificate authority that signed the certificate, and then the browser tells the user, okay, you know what, I trust this guy, you can go ahead and proceed. Email works similarly. The sender, which is acting as a client, SMTP client, doesn't need a certificate. It's just the receiving end that needs a certificate. So when you use Zeems, and if you don't have a certificate in Zeems, outbound emails will still be encrypted because it's the receiving end that needs a certificate, but inbound emails won't be encrypted. So that's why you need that certificate. Client may or may not trust the certificate. So let's say if you use a self-signed certificate, which comes for free with Zeems, the sending server or client may not trust that certificate, and it may decide, hey, you know what, the certificate is not signed, so I'm just going to abort the start TLS, or in the worst case scenario, it won't send an email. So that's why it's important that you do get a certificate. And of course, if it's a self-signed, then it's up to the sender whether to trust or ignore the warnings. Okay. Now, a lot of people ask us that, hey, can we use the Let's Encrypt certificate? Because the Let's Encrypt certificate is for free. The only problem with Let's Encrypt is that you have to renew the certificate every 3 months. So you can certainly use Let's Encrypt certificate. There's a whole bunch of process that you have to go through when you get a Let's Encrypt certificate. And so the Let's Encrypt certificate are in DER format. Zeems does not understand DER format. It only understands PKCS 12. So basically what you're going to have to do is, once you get a certificate from Let's Encrypt, you have to use this Open SSL program to convert it. You can check Google how to use Open SSL, but if you guys have questions, just send us an email and we'll let you know how to convert your Let's Encrypt certificate to a PKCS format so that it can be used with Zeems. Another option that you have is, if you already have a purchase certificate for, let's say, an IIS server, you can simply export that certificate from IIS server and import it into Zeems, and that'll work as well. And of course, you always have an option of creating a brand new certificate for Zeems. Now, one important thing when you purchase a certificate is a host name. Often people have different host names for their website and mail server. So let's say if your mail server's public host name is mail.yourcompany.com, then you need a certificate for mail.yourcompany.com. You can also get a wildcard certificate, which gives you the ability to put as many domains as you want on the, as many subdomains as you want. So that sometimes is much useful, because if you have multiple servers, it's a much better option. Okay, so when you use these certificates, Zeems will let you know if the communication is encrypted or it's not encrypted. In some of the recent versions of Zeems, there are some status icons that were added. So this first icon, which you see, this lock, let me see if I can draw this. So this lock here, this tells the administrator that when this email came in, it used start TLS. So incoming message into Zeems was encrypted. This one right here is gray, and that means that it was not encrypted. So the sender, even though Zeems supports it, sender did not bother to encrypt it, and that's the reason why this icon is gray here. And similarly, when Zeems sends this email out to the next hop, now the next hop could be either your own server that is sitting after Zeems, or maybe a server out on the internet. So when it sends out to any of the servers, this icon here, first, when you see this icon, that means that the message has been delivered. If this icon's not there, that means something is wrong. Maybe the message is sitting in the queue and it's waiting to be delivered. But the minute you see this arrow, that means that it has been delivered. And the green color means that it is encrypted. So in the first example, not only the incoming message was encrypted, the outgoing message was also encrypted. Okay. Now, what is the problem with Start TLS? Let's talk about that. Let me see if I could erase my, okay, there we go, they're gone. All right, so there is a problem with Start TLS. So earlier I said Start TLS only encrypts the channels, meaning the communication part. Let me draw this again. So this part is encrypted. This one here, this is encrypted, all this, right? But the minute the message comes into the other SMTP server, so let's say in case of Zeems, it is not encrypted, okay? And that is where we need end-to-end encryption. Because what happens, let me go back and see in the previous, okay, this one. So in here, this channel is encrypted, but the encryption ends right at this stage. So all the way here, it came in encrypted, but the minute it got here, it got decrypted. And since it was decrypted while it was inside the SMTP server, people can look inside a message. That's how the spam filters are able to look inside the message and see if this is spam or not a spam. Administrators can also look inside the message to see what it is. The problem is that, let's say if a user sitting here wants to send a encrypted message all the way to a recipient on the other end, there are so many parties involved in the middle that everybody can basically view the message, okay? Because anybody sitting at this stage can view the message. Anybody sitting here, as well as anybody sitting here, will be able to view those messages. And that is a problem that is not solved by TLS, okay? And that problem is where end-to-end encryption comes in. So by end-to-end encryption, what we mean is, okay. So by end-to-end encryption, I mean, when a user sitting on this end sends a message, it should not get decrypted until it goes all the way to the other end. Okay, so if it's even Zeems or whatever SMTP server is this or this, nobody should be able to look at the message, regardless if this part is encrypted or not. Whether you use Start TLS or there is no Start TLS, it should not matter. Okay, the user at the very end should get an encrypted message. And that's what's called the end-to-end encryption. So I think probably in version 4.6 or something, I forget the exact version number, Zeems introduced end-to-end encryption. And that allows users to encrypt the message, right from their email client, and it gets encrypted all the way, okay? We have videos on our website that talks about this feature. So if you're looking for end-to-end encryption, that's, watch those videos. They'll explain how to use that in Zeems. Let me clear these drawings. Okay, so how does end-to-end encryption work? Basically, the composer, or whoever is composing the email, they have to decide whether they want to encrypt the message. And the way it works is you can use any tool, whether it's Outlook, Thunderbird, your iPhone, or an Android device. You compose your email just as if you're doing normally, and you put a predefined tag in the subject line. By default, that predefined tag is EncPass. So if I were to type a subject line with the word EncPass followed by a arbitrary password in brackets, that's going to be my password. And the minute Zeems gets the message, it's going to get encrypted. Okay, so the password could be in subject line, or it can be predefined. So when I say predefined, that means users can create predefined passwords for certain recipients. For example, if you work for a bank and you know that you deal with your clients, you may want to encrypt every communication sent to the client with maybe their social security number, because that's something that only that client will know. So you can automatically create those rules in Zeams, and it'll automatically encrypt. So in that case, you don't have to put the password in the subject line. You simply put the tagline, which is ink pass, and that's usually enough. Another option is that you can create some sensitive triggers. So for example, credit card numbers or social security numbers or any of those things. So if Zeams finds that you have those numbers in an email, it is automatically going to encrypt it. And if a predefined password is not defined, the message is going to get rejected by Zeams because you did not encrypt the email. Okay. Now, how does Zeams encrypt? Basically, what it does is the minute it gets the emails, it creates an encrypted PDF file containing the body of the message, and it includes all the color coding that you've used, the images and everything. And basically, it's going to create an encrypted PDF file. If you have attachments, they're going to stay in that PDF file. Okay, and eventually, so when the end user gets the email, they'll see a very generic message with a PDF attached. And when they try to open the PDF, it's going to prompt them for a password. And if that password's correct, then of course they'll be able to see. If the password's not correct, then they won't be able to see that data. So the bottom line is that you can achieve end-to-end encryption with this feature. Okay. All right, so that is pretty much it as far as the encryption part goes. Let's talk about a few features in the next version of Zeams. The most important one is the language filters. So let me clear this guy again. Okay, so language filter. I'm going to show you what that is. Basically, in previous versions of Zeams, there was no way to determine whether something was in Chinese or Japanese or whatever. So in the next version, we're going to have under the content filter, there's going to be another kind of filter called the language filters. Oops, log me out. Hang on. So again, let's go here. So in language filter, basically there are different categories of languages because a lot of languages follow a certain characteristic. So for example, Chinese, Japanese, and Korean are all bundled together. A lot of Indian languages are bundled together. So this way you can say, okay, if 80% of the message is in Chinese, then I would like to give it a score of 80. Or if 40% of the email is in any of the Indian languages, then assign a score of 30. Okay, so if I look at my junk here, let's see if I can find junk that is in a foreign language. Okay, there we go. So here is one in Chinese. So if I hover the mouse over the reason, it is gonna say, you know what, this is probably not the right, oh no, actually, I'm sorry. The very first one, 78% of the message contains Chinese, Japanese, or Korean characters. So it assigned a score of 80 because in this example, we have, we said that, hey, if you get an email with more than 20% of Chinese characters, please assign that score. Okay. So that's how this works. Now we only have junk that are coming in Chinese. Only in Chinese. So I can't talk about the other ones. All right. So that's one of the biggest change that will be coming up in the next feature. Next version. Another feature is this external subject tag. What this is, if you get inbound emails from the internet, sometimes users make mistake because they try to forge emails. And even with SPF, there are new tricks that users use to forge. Let me see if I can find one of those emails. So I'm going to go to my reports and let's see if I can find one of those. Okay. See, it's hard for me to find one right now, but basically what they do, they put the sender name twice in the from clause. And because the sender name is twice, actually, let me show that into Zeems.com. Okay, so on Zeems.com, we created this, this web page. And basically what they do is they put the sender name twice. So if you see this part here, this is actually the spammer. And this is fake, all right? Now, when you open this email in Outlook, Outlook basically looks and finds an email address here, and then it simply drops a second value. So when you open the email up, you think that your CEO sent you an email, but in fact it came from here. And SPF failed because in the envelope, they use not the CEO's address, but the spammer's address. And the spammer address does not have any SPF record. So there was no SPF lookup done. Okay, so here's a very good example where a naive user may think that, hey, the message actually came from the CEO. And so there are two filters in Zeem. So if you scroll down, you know, there's this tricky sender and then inconsistent sender. Actually, well, let me see if I can find a tricky sender. So if I go back to my reports, custom filter reports, let me see, tricky, where is it? Okay, tricky sender. Is it the one? Okay, this is it. So if you look at the from, there are two email addresses in the from, okay? Outlook is never gonna display this one because it thinks, this is the first one is the right email address. And that is what, so you need to specify a score for this tricky sender, okay? Now, so again, coming back to the external subject, so what we added was under the score configuration, there's a new field called external tag. So let's assume that I put here in bracket external, and then I save it. If this is the value in my subject tag, every email that's coming from the internet will have that tag in every good message. So when the end user gets a message, they get an indication, hey, this message came from the internet. And even though if they, let's say they come up with a new technique 2 months down the road that Zeems hasn't captured yet, then they will know that this message came from the internet and did not come from their CEO. Okay, so that's one other new feature that will be added in the next version. Then we updated the mail merge plugin a little bit. Performance for the IMAP server was a little bit improved. Okay, so that's so this one is version 6.7, and currently we are at 6038 build number, but most likely the build number will change, you know, as we get closer to the release date. We are thinking of releasing this version probably by end of February. But if anybody wants to try it out, let us know and we'll send them the pre-release version. So that's okay. So that is pretty much it. That's just a summary. And now, if you guys have any questions, please use your chat program. Your chat. There should be a way to chat and send me questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Okay, so there's one question here. How does the end-to-end encryption handle file attachments? Okay, so a lot of people, I don't know, a lot of people probably don't know that PDF files can have embedded attachments. So let's assume that I'm sending an email out to somebody with an image in it. That image will be attached inside a PDF file. So when I open the PDF, of course, I'm going to see the body of the email. And then usually, depending upon which PDF reader you're using, but let's say if you're using the Adobe PDF reader, at the bottom lower left-hand corner, you're going to see a paper clip. And when you click that paper clip, it's going to display all the attachments inside that PDF. So that's how Zeems will attach those emails. Now, let's assume that you send an attachment that's very big, like maybe 30 meg or 50 meg. By default, Zeems is not configured to handle a 50 meg attachment. But we have another product, we call that Cinnamon. If you combine Cinnamon with Zeems, then you can send large attachment. And when I say large attachments, it could be 200 meg, 500 meg, doesn't really matter how big they are. And then what happens is that Zeems, so let's assume that you want to encrypt an email with a 100 meg attachment. The way it's going to work is the message after your Outlook. So your Outlook is going to encrypt it. Outlook is going to compose the message, attach that large file. The message, assuming that Exchange is not in the middle, the email goes directly from your Outlook to Zeems. If Exchange is in the middle, then you're going to have to configure Exchange so that it accepts emails that are at least 100 meg in size. So once Zeems gets a message, Zeems is going to send that email to Cinnamon. Cinnamon is going to detach the file, send the remaining body of the email along with the URL to download the file to Zeems. Zeems is going to encrypt and create the PDF, and the PDF will have the download link so that the user can download. And eventually, the user will get the file. Okay. All right. We have another question. Okay. How can we reset the encryption password if you forget? Okay. So there are two schools of thoughts when it comes to end-to-end encryption. The way Zeems works is it encrypts the file the minute it gets it. Okay, the file never stays in unencrypted format. So whatever password you decided to use when you compose the email, it cannot be changed, and it's not stored anywhere. So if you forget the password, you're probably gonna have to send the email again with the new password. Now, there's another school of thought, and what that does is it doesn't encrypt it right away. It expects the recipient to create an account on your email server or the web server, whatever, and that recipient creates their own password, okay? And then the encryption happens using their password. So the sender never knows the password. The recipient is the one that creates a password. The problem with that approach is that first, it stays in an unencrypted format on the email server, at least temporarily. But more importantly, it's kind of a hassle for the recipient, because now the recipients have to create another account, remember another set of passwords, and a lot of times recipients are reluctant in creating accounts on somebody else's website. So, and that is the reason why we decided not to go that way. So the way we do it is the sender is going to decide the password. They have the ability to predefine passwords for certain recipients. So every time you encrypt the email, it's going to use that same password. So you don't have to change the password over and over. Or if you like, you can change the password over and over, and every email is going to have a different password. But you cannot reset the password, because once the email has been encrypted, it's going to stay in an encrypted form. Okay, and it cannot be decrypted without that magic word. Any other questions? If you guys have questions, make sure you use that chat. There should be a button for chat. Use that chat to post your questions. All right. I was late to the webinar. Yes, a recording will be available. Even the previous recordings, if you just go to zeems.com, there will be a section. Let me see where it is. So in zeems.com, if you go here, support webinars. So if you go here, these are the webinars that we did earlier. So if you want, you can watch these. This one will also be here shortly. Any other questions? No questions? All right, so I guess if there are no questions, we can probably end this webinar. If you have any questions in the future, feel free to send us an email or call us. We're always here to help you. All right, thank you very much, and everybody have a nice day. Bye.